Welcome to the ranking of the 8 Led Zeppelin studio albums from 1969 to 1979. So we'll start off with Led Zeppelin 1. I think this is a fantastic album for a debut album. Starts off with the epic Good Times Bad Times. What an amazing song this is. Got great groove, great riffs, and of course fantastic drums by John Bonham on this one. Then we move into Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, which of course was made famous by Joan Baez, but Led Zeppelin put their own take on this, taking it from an acoustic into an absolutely classic heavy rock song. Jimmy Page is fantastic on this one, and John Bonham absolutely rocks it on the drums. Song number 3 is a cover of Willie Dixon's You Shook Me. Now, I think there's actually better covers of this one out there, including Jeff Beck's, so go check that one out if you haven't already. But this one's okay. It's a decent cover of a decent song, but I think this was filler on Led Zeppelin's debut album. Track number 4 on this album is Dazed and Confused, an absolute classic, with Led Zeppelin dipping their toe in psychedelia as well as heavy rock. Track number 5, Your Time Is Gonna Come, is a decent track, and track number 6 is an acoustic instrumental by Jimmy Page. Track number 7, Communication Breakdown, one of the best Led Zeppelin riffs of all time. And then we go into track number 8, which is another Willie Dixon cover of I Can't Quit You Baby, and then it finishes off with How Many More Times. It's a great debut album, but for me, just contains too many covers, especially 2 covers of Willie Dixon songs. I know they needed these to fill up the album, but in my opinion, it's just filler. So I'm going to put this one in the A tier, Led Zeppelin 1. Moving on to Led Zeppelin 2. All the songs on this album are credited to Led Zeppelin. It was recorded in various studios while the band were on tour. And it starts off with the epic Whole Lotta Love, with that middle section that is really Led Zeppelin pushing the boundaries and dipping their toe into progressive rock. Track number 2, What Is and What Should Never Be, is an absolute classic, real stomping heavy rock song. And track number 3, The Lemon Song, is one of the best takes on the 12-bar blues that's ever been recorded in my opinion. The bass playing by John Paul Jones on this one in particular is exquisite. Track number 4, Thank You, is an acoustic ballad. For me, I could always take or leave it. And then track number 5, Heartbreaker, is an absolute classic staple of hard rock. And Jimmy Page has a fantastic guitar solo in the middle of this one, which is literally solo without the rest of the band until they kick in. Livin' Lovin' Made is decent, but the end of this album finishes really strong with Ramble On, Moby Dick and Bring It On Home. And of course we've got the drum solo in the middle of Moby Dick, so what more could you want? I think Led Zeppelin 2 deserves to be in the top tier of Led Zeppelin albums. Moving on to Led Zeppelin 3 now, a complete departure from the sound on the first 2 albums. All in all, this album focuses on more of an acoustic and folk rock vibe, but it doesn't start that way. The Immigrant Song is one of the best Led Zeppelin rock songs in their whole back catalogue. Following this, we go into Friends and Celebration Day, which are a lot cleaner than the previous heavy rock tracks that Led Zeppelin were known for on the first 2 albums. Song number 4, Since I've Been Loving You, is absolutely immense. What a great blues rock classic with a fantastic guitar solo from Jimmy Page. And track number 5, Out on the Tiles, is a stomping rocker in a folk style. The rest of this album is really Led Zeppelin stretching out in a folk kind of vibe. Got Gallows Pole, Tangerine, That's the Way, Bon Are Your Stump, and Hats Off to Roy Harper. For me, this is probably in the 3rd tier of Led Zeppelin albums. Moving on to 1971, and we have the untitled Led Zeppelin album. Some people call it 4 Symbols, some people call it Led Zeppelin 4, but whatever name you put on this album, it is an absolute classic. Starts off with one of the best Led Zeppelin songs of all time in my opinion, Black Dog. Fantastic call and response from Robert Plant and the rest of the band. And then who could forget that epic chorus and the fantastic guitar solo by Jimmy Page. Rock and Roll comes next, and it's another take on the 12-bar blues, but this time it's a lot faster. That leads into the Battle of Evermore, which is Led Zeppelin portraying more of a folk style on this one, with Sandy Denny from Fairport Convention adding in additional vocals. And Battle of Evermore takes you down just as it goes into Stairway to Heaven, which starts very light and delicate, but then brings you up to a climax for Jimmy Page's epic solo, and of course that fantastic outro with Robert Plant screaming his lungs off. Side 2 on this one starts with Misty Mountain Hop, which I've always had a soft spot for. I think it's a fantastic song. Even though it's massively folk influenced, it's still a rocker in my opinion. Four Sticks is also a great song. Then we have Going to California, which is more of an acoustic folk song, before we finish with one of the best drum tracks ever recorded on a rock and roll album, When the Levee Breaks, is absolutely epic. So Led Zeppelin 4 has to be a top tier album, and I'm putting it ahead of Led Zeppelin 2. So now we move on to the fifth Led Zeppelin album, recorded in 1973. It is, of course, Houses of the Holy. The band went for a different sound on this one. There's elements of funk, elements of reggae, and elements of prog. The album kicks off with the epic The Song Remains the Same, with Jimmy Page pushing the boundaries yet again on the 12-string guitar. Next we have the epic Rain song, which was Jimmy Page's nod to George Harrison and his song Something. Of course, George famously said that Led Zeppelin couldn't write ballads, and this song was Jimmy's response. Next we have Over the Hills and Far Away, another brilliant Led Zeppelin song, followed by The Crunge. The second half of this album was where it gets really odd. We've got Dancing Days with a fantastic drum track, but some very odd chord choices by Jimmy Page, but it just makes it sound amazing. Track number 6 has been pronounced many different ways. Dire Maker, Deer Maker, or possibly Jer Maker. In any case, it's not a strong track and it's probably the weakest track on this album. No Quarter is absolutely epic, and this is Led Zeppelin in full prog rock mode. And the album finishes off with The Ocean, which is an absolute rocker, something that would have been at home on Led Zeppelin 2. So in my opinion, Houses of the Holy is a second tier album. I'm going to put it in here in the A slot. Probably not quite as good as Led Zeppelin 1, but still a very strong album. Album number 6 was released in 1975 and it ended up being a double album. We are talking, of course, about Physical Graffiti. Starts off with Custard Pie, which is a great intro for this double album, and then it goes into The Rover, which again is an absolute rocker, something that will be akin of the stuff that was on Led Zeppelin 2. The third track on the album is the epic In My Time of Dying, clocking in at 11 minutes and 4 seconds. Fantastic work by the whole band on this one. Jimmy Page with his slide guitar, Robert Plant with his epic vocals, and of course John Bonham absolutely belting it out of the park on the drums. And of course we can't forget John Paul Jones' arrangement skills as well as his epic bass playing on this track. On Trampled Underfoot, John Paul Jones takes centre stage with his clavinet riff at the start. Another stomping rock song that absolutely kills. And the last track on disc 1 is probably one of the most epic Led Zeppelin songs. It is of course Kashmir, arranged by John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page, with John Bonham playing out of his skin and Robert Plant on absolute fire on this one. Disc 1 is a perfect 40 minutes of music in anyone's book. Then we move into disc 2, where it's a little bit of a mixed bag. We have songs here that were recorded on sessions for previous albums but didn't make the final cut, and they seem to be mopped up and put onto side 2 of this album. It kicks off with In the Light, followed by Bon or Yor, and then Down by the Seaside, which is a pretty weak track by Led Zeppelin standards. 10 Years Gone is absolutely epic, and then we get Night Flight, The Wonton Song, Boogie with Stew, Black Country Woman, and Sick Again. Disc 2 is nowhere near the standard set by Disc 1 on this album. However, because it's a double album, we can't judge it to the same standards as a single album, and because the first disc is absolute perfection, I'm going to put this in as a top tier album, and I'm actually going to put it ahead of Led Zeppelin 2 because I believe that it's got better material on it and it's certainly more expansive. The sixth Led Zeppelin album was Presence, and it was released in 1976. This is where the band were starting to kind of fall apart. Jimmy Page was struggling with substance abuse, John Bonham was drinking heavily, and Robert Plant was recovering from a bad car accident and had to sing most of the vocals from a wheelchair. The album kicks off with Achilles' Last Stand. In my opinion, this is the closest thing that we will come to a symphony of guitars, and Jimmy Page is excellent on this one. This is followed by For Your Life, which is again another classic Led Zeppelin song, and then we get Royal Orleans, which to me is very average. Nobody's Fault But Mine picks up where In My Time of Dying left off. Brilliant slide guitar by Jimmy Page and excellent vocals from Robert Plant. And then the album quality kind of drops off with songs like Candy Store Rock, Hot Song for Nowhere, and Tea for One. So for me, this is a third tier album from Led Zeppelin and belongs in here on par with Led Zeppelin 3. Led Zeppelin's 8th and final studio album is In Through the Outdoor, released in 1979. The album kicks off with In the Evening, which is just okay by Led Zeppelin standards, but the rest of this album is very forgettable for me. So I'm putting it in the D tier. So my ranking from worst to best: In Through the Outdoor in the D tier. Then we have Presence and Led Zeppelin 3 in the B tier. Houses of the Holy and Led Zeppelin 1 in the A tier. And Led Zeppelin 2, Physical Graffiti, and Led Zeppelin 4 in the top tier. Let me know in the comments below what your tiered ranking would be of Led Zeppelin albums. If you liked the video, stick a like on it, and if you could also subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye for now.